If you like this story, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next exciting stories. And now let's enjoy the story. Ironwood Federal Penitentiary stood like a fortress on the edge of nowhere, its concrete walls stretching toward the sky and crowned with layers of razor wire that glinted menacingly in the afternoon sun. It wasn't just a prison, it was a machine built to crush spirits, a place where time itself seemed to crawl. Ethan Quinn sat in the back of a sweltering prison transport bus, his hands shackled to his waist. The rhythmic jostling of the bus over uneven roads did little to disturb his stoic posture. The other prisoners eyed him warily, noting his lean, wiry frame and the piercing calm of his gaze. He didn't belong in this world of hardened criminals and broken men. At least, not at first glance. As the bus slowed to a halt, Ethan took a deep breath, bracing himself for what lay ahead. A guard barked orders for the prisoners to disembark. The oppressive heat of the day hit him like a wall as he stepped onto the gravel yard. Rows of armed guards stood watching, their hands resting on their holstered weapons, while an assembly line of prisoners shuffled forward to be processed. The air was thick with tension, a potent mix of fear, defiance, and despair. The guards pushed Ethan forward, their rough hands reminding him that any resistance would be met with force. He complied silently, his eyes scanning the prison yard. Inmates lingered in clusters, their conversations hushed. Some were openly curious, others openly hostile. To them, Ethan was fresh meat, a newcomer to test or exploit. A voice broke his thoughts. "Keep moving," barked a guard. He shoved Ethan toward the intake building, where a grueling gauntlet of paperwork, searches, and orientation awaited. Once inside, Ethan was stripped of his belongings and given a set of ill-fitting prison clothes. As he stood in line for his cell assignment, he caught snippets of whispered conversations around him. "New guy won't last a week. You see those scars? Quiet ones like him are dangerous. The hammer's gonna eat him alive." None of it fazed Ethan. He was used to being underestimated. In fact, he preferred it that way. Ironwood wasn't just a prison, it was a kingdom, and Warden Douglas Carter was its undisputed ruler. Beneath the facade of maintaining order, Carter operated a shadowy empire fueled by corruption. His most lucrative venture was the underground fight ring, where prisoners were forced to fight for survival while outsiders bet on their lives. It was a brutal enterprise, one that lined Carter's pockets and kept the inmates under his thumb. Shane, the Hammer. Mitchell was the reigning champion of the fight ring. Towering and heavily muscled, Shane had carved out his position through sheer brutality. He was Carter's enforcer, a man who thrived on violence and kept the other prisoners in check through fear. In Ironwood, Shane's word was law. Ethan's first encounter with Shane came during his second day in the yard. The air was thick with heat, and groups of inmates loitered near the weights, the basketball court, and the makeshift benches. Ethan sat alone on the edge of the yard, his eyes scanning the scene. It didn't take long for trouble to find him. "Hey, new guy," a gruff voice called. Shane Mitchell strode toward him, flanked by two other inmates who wore sneers of amusement. "You're sitting in my spot." Ethan glanced at the bench beneath him, then back at Shane. "Plenty of room elsewhere." Shane's eyes narrowed. "Guess you don't know how things work around here." "See, I don't ask twice." Ethan remained seated, his body relaxed but ready. The tension was palpable, drawing the attention of nearby inmates who paused their conversations to watch. Shane threw the first punch. It was a wide, powerful swing meant to intimidate, but Ethan wasn't there when it landed. He moved with surgical precision, sidestepping the blow and twisting Shane's arm behind his back in one fluid motion. Shane let out a roar of pain as Ethan released him, stepping back to avoid escalation. The yard fell silent. For the first time, Shane Mitchell, the untouchable champion, had been humiliated. His face twisted in fury as he staggered to his feet. "You'll regret that," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. But Ethan didn't flinch. His calm, unyielding gaze sent a clear message. He wasn't afraid. The events in the yard didn't go unnoticed. Warden Carter observed everything from his office, his interest piqued by the quiet newcomer who had bested Shane. Later that night, two guards appeared at Ethan's cell and escorted him to Carter's office. The warden's office was a stark contrast to the rest of the prison. Plush leather chairs, expensive whiskey, and a wall-mounted television displaying live footage from the fight ring painted a picture of indulgence. "You've made quite an impression, Mr. Quinn," Carter began, lighting a cigar. "Not many men can make Shane look like a fool." Ethan remained silent, his expression unreadable. Carter leaned back in his chair, studying him. "You've got potential, and potential, in my world, means profit." "Not interested," Ethan replied. Carter's smile didn't waver. "Oh, I think you will be. You see, I've done my homework. You've got a brother, don't you? Liam Quinn, serving time at Greystone Correctional. A quiet kid, not built for this life. It'd be a shame if he were transferred here." The threat hung in the air like a noose. Ethan's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What do you want?" Carter's grin widened. "You fight, I make money, and your brother stays safe. It's that simple." The underground fight ring was a grim makeshift arena in the prison basement. The air was thick with sweat, smoke, and the sound of jeering inmates. Ethan's first fight was against two opponents, a deliberate handicap arranged by Carter to test his limits. The crowd erupted as Ethan entered the ring. Chains shackled his ankles, limiting his movement. His opponents wasted no time, rushing him with brute force. But Ethan's mind was a battlefield of calculations. He dodged the first punch, using the momentum to pull one attacker into the other. His movements were precise, efficient, and devastating. Within minutes, both men were on the ground, unconscious. The crowd roared, but Ethan's focus remained unshaken. His victory wasn't for glory, it was for survival, for Liam. Ethan's victory in the ring sent shockwaves through Ironwood. His calculated efficiency had earned him a dangerous reputation, drawing the attention of both the warden and the inmates. Warden Carter was thrilled by the profit Ethan's fight had generated, but frustrated by his refusal to play along with the pageantry of it all. In contrast, Shane Mitchell seethed with humiliation and vowed revenge. The yard became a powder keg. Shane's loyalists began cornering Ethan at every opportunity, testing his patience and limits. One day, Curtis, Ethan's reluctant cellmate, delivered a warning. "Shane's planning something big. You humiliated him, and he's not letting it go." Ethan didn't respond immediately. His sharp gaze studied Curtis, weighing the sincerity of his words. "I didn't ask for trouble," Ethan finally said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "But I'm not running from it either." Curtis sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Just watch your back. Guys like Shane don't fight fair." Word of Ethan's prowess had spread far beyond the prison walls. Warden Carter, sensing an opportunity to cement his underground empire, announced a high-stakes fight between Ethan and Shane. The stakes? Ethan's freedom or his destruction. The makeshift arena was packed with inmates and shadowy outsiders, Carter's most trusted allies in the corrupt network. Ethan, bloodied but unbroken, stepped into the ring. Shane loomed large, his smirk dripping with venom. Blow after blow Ethan endured. Shane's brute force clashed against Ethan's precision, a battle of skill versus savagery. But Ethan's resolve carried him through. In a final, stunning move, he disarmed Shane, leaving him sprawled on the ground as the crowd erupted. With Shane defeated, the cracks in Ironwood's corrupt foundation began to show. Ethan, with the help of Curtis and a few unlikely allies, began gathering evidence of Carter's illegal operations. The network of corruption unraveled, leading to Carter's arrest and the dismantling of the fight ring. The inmates, inspired by Ethan's stand, began reclaiming their dignity, one small victory at a time. Ironwood was no longer just a prison. It was a battlefield where justice began to emerge from the shadows. Ethan's triumph over Shane and his exposure of Warden Carter's schemes set off a chain reaction within Ironwood. The fight ring's collapse left a vacuum of power, and the inmates who had once thrived on violence now found themselves without purpose. Some sought redemption, while others schemed for control. Curtis emerged as an unlikely ally to Ethan, his loyalty cemented after seeing the quiet strength Ethan carried. Together they began forming alliances among the prisoners, encouraging unity instead of division. "We've got to give these men something to believe in," Ethan said one night. The two huddled in their dimly lit cell. "If we don't, they'll tear each other apart." Curtis nodded. But what happens when the guards see us organizing? They're not going to let that slide. Ethan's gaze hardened. Then we make it something they can't ignore. Change doesn't come easy, Curtis, but it's worth fighting for. Meanwhile, Angela Brooks, a shrewd businesswoman who had bet heavily on Ethan's fights, began to take notice of the growing unrest in Ironwood. She reached out through her network, planting seeds of hope for a larger movement to expose corruption in the prison system as a whole. Her investment in Ethan wasn't just monetary. She saw him as a symbol of resistance. "You've got more eyes on you than you realize," Angela told Ethan during a rare meeting in the prison's visiting room. "Play this right, and you'll be the spark that changes everything." The guards, realizing they were losing control, began to crack down with brutal force. Random searches, isolation punishments, and staged accidents became common. Ethan became a prime target, but his growing network of allies protected him at every turn. One fateful day, a group of guards cornered Ethan in the shower block. Their intent was clear: to make an example of him. "You think you can change things?" one guard sneered, slamming Ethan against the tiles. "You're just another number." Ethan didn't resist. He absorbed the blows, his silence more defiant than any words. Just as the situation reached a boiling point, Curtis and a group of inmates stormed in, their sheer numbers forcing the guards to retreat. "They're scared," Curtis said, helping Ethan to his feet. "Scared of what you represent." The tension in Ironwood reached a breaking point. Angela's efforts on the outside, combined with the evidence Ethan and Curtis had smuggled out, caught the attention of federal investigators. But Warden Carter, desperate to maintain his empire, wasn't going down without a fight. Carter staged one final fight, forcing Ethan to face off against 3 opponents in a brutal no-rules match. The goal was clear: to break Ethan once and for all. But what Carter didn't anticipate was the unity Ethan had inspired among the inmates. As the fight began, the crowd's chants shifted. Instead of cheering for blood, they roared Ethan's name, their voices drowning out the chaos. The fight became a symbol of resistance, and when Ethan emerged victorious, the inmates erupted in defiance. Federal agents stormed Ironwood the next morning, armed with warrants and backed by Angela's testimony. Carter was arrested, and the prison's darkest secrets were exposed to the world. A new beginning. Ironwood Federal Penitentiary was transformed. Under new leadership, the prison shifted its focus from punishment to rehabilitation. Ethan, though offered early release, chose to stay and continue his work within the system, mentoring inmates and ensuring the changes stuck. Curtis became his right-hand man, their bond forged in the crucible of adversity. Angela's influence grew, her advocacy for prison reform gaining national attention. Ethan stood in the prison yard one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The scars on his body were a testament to the battles he'd fought, but his spirit remained unbroken. "We did it," Curtis said, joining him. "We actually did it." Ethan nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. This is just the beginning. The sun set on Ironwood, but for the first time in years, it felt like a dawn was just around the corner. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please support me by clicking the logo in the bottom right corner to subscribe to my channel. This way, you won't miss any of the exciting stories coming up. Thank you so much.